Hello, everyone. So, today we are going to be talking about Andrew Jackson and the Trail of Tears. Now, this is kind of one of the tragedies of American history and kind of a black eye in as far as our history is concerned, but it also has real life consequences and has made a huge impact on the Native American community in the United States of America, even to present. Okay, let's start off with Andrew Jackson, first Tennessee president, took the oath of office and became the seventh president of the United States, March 4, 1829. There was a lot of controversy over his election. He's seen as the president, for the common man. He earns the nickname Old Hickory during a march surrounding the War of 1812, where he lets a soldier ride his horse who is wounded, and even though Jackson has wounds from battles and then in duels as well, and he's in a lot of pain, he cares for his men, his soldiers, as he goes along, and he earns this nickname, Old Hickory. And he's really seen by the people as a war hero. They would post and sell paintings and pictures of Jackson's victory at New Orleans in most general stores all across America, following that conflict. And so when people went to vote and they were talking about this president or this presidential candidate, like, he was someone whose face that they knew, and he's seen as a war hero, etc., and a person of the people. Okay, the election that made Jackson president was the first in which all white men could vote. There's a shift in the way that voting is taking place and occurring, because before it was only white men who owned land. This goes back to the ancient Greek tradition, where only citizens who owned property could vote in their elections. And this is very reminiscent of that, but now it's all white men, and voting is now expanding. It expands again after the Civil War, and then during the suffrage movement in the early 1900s, you have women being able to vote as well. Many of the voters chose Jackson because they felt he was a common man like them. He was not an intellectual. He was seen as a farmer who could get dirty and work with his hands, and people could relate to him. New states for the Union. Union had grown from the original 13 colonies, the original 13 states, to 24. Vermont, Maine, Kentucky, Tennessee had become state, as well as Ohio, Illinois, and Indiana. In the Northwest Territory, Louisiana and Missouri had formed from the Louisiana Purchase. Mississippi, Alabama were added to the Union, and Florida as a territory. So the nation is expanding. All of this to say that the nation is growing quickly, and with the numbers of states that are growing, you also have a huge increase in the number of people through immigration, and then high birth rate. And so you have white, predominantly white European people who are moving westward into Native American territory, and there is going to be conflict and problem that results in this. The Native Americans have been there for thousands of years, and now all of a sudden their territory that they have traditionally called their home is being taken away from them, or they are being attacked. There is a lot of war during this time period with Native American tribes, and they're not official, like, full-blown wars like say the War of 1812 or the Vietnam War or just something like that. What they are wars and conflicts with individual or groups of Native American nations, and they occur all over the United States as the white Americans, continue to expand westward. Okay? The Indian Removal Act of 1830. In 1830, Congress passes the Indian Removal Act. Law said that Indians living east of the Mississippi River must leave their lands and move to Indian Territory, current-day Oklahoma. And so you have people who grew up in the forests of Georgia, where have spent time in that area, where it's almost jungle-like, and then you're displacing people and moving them out into plains country in Oklahoma, where they have no idea how to make a living or how to survive in this completely new territory, where none of the ways that they have survived for generations in their homeland is applicable and accessible in this completely different geographic area. And then, they didn't know this then, but then you have the Dust Bowl happening, later on, which caused huge problems for these individuals, these families. So President Jackson signed the law, ordered the Creeks, Choctaw, Seminole, Chickasaw, and Cherokee, and other tribes to leave their lands. And tribes fought against the removal, and they actually bring it to Congress. The Seminoles in Florida, with the help of runaway slaves, struggled to keep their land. In the Seminole Wars, these are actually, recorded wars. Many of the Seminoles were either killed or forced to leave their homes. The Cherokee Nation, 15,000 Cherokee, made one of the richest tribes in the United States, owned small farms, a few large plantations. They actually had slaves. And a lot of these communities were actually Christian, and they went to church, and they had adapted to a European lifestyle, but because of their ethnicity, they were discriminated against and rounded up and sent westward in this movement. They are their own government with a constitution and elected leaders, and then gold is discovered on their lands, and settlers pour in to make their claims, and Chief John Ross fights back in the U.S. courts. He takes it all the way to the Supreme Court, where Chief Justice John Marshall ruled that the United States should protect the Cherokee and their land in Georgia. And then Jackson hears about it. Instead of supporting the court ruling, the president completely ignored it and went through with removing these individuals and sending them out to Oklahoma. Jackson sent soldiers to remove the Cherokee to Indian Territory. By late 1838, soldiers had forced the last group of Cherokee to leave their lands. The journey to the Indian Territory became known as the Trail of Tears. On average, about 116-day journey or time period that this is taking place, where you've got different communities being rounded up and sent over a land route and also a river route. They traveled over 800 miles through North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Missouri, and Arkansas. And in March 26, 1839, and more than 4,000 of them died. So if you can imagine, if you have 15 friends, you're sitting in a room with 15 friends, and 4 of them die. Or if you're in a classroom with 30, 8 of those 30 are now dead. these are individuals that you would have grown up and known and cared for, and their family, and it was just terrible. Cold, disease, lack of food during the 116-day journey. They were rounded up quickly. They didn't really have, in a lot of times, adequate time to prepare. It was, essentially, take whatever you can. You've got a couple hours and let's go. Here are the two routes. You've got the land route, northern route in red, and then the water route in blue. And this is a map of the original extent of the Cherokee Nation territory. It's spanning multiple states, and it is huge. And then the Cherokee land, as the settlers are pushing them into a smaller and smaller territory as they're fighting against them. And then before removal, they are relegated to this small little patch here, smallish, from what the territory they originally had. And then gold was found on their land, and the United States government forces them off their land and sends them out into the middle of nowhere. It was a really terrible, tragic thing to this little patch in Oklahoma. Oklahoma. Okay, important dates: 1791, the U.S. government agrees to accept the independence of the Cherokee Nation, signed a treaty with them. And we broke that treaty when we removed them from their land. 1829, gold is discovered on Cherokee land. Settlers start pouring in and staking their claims. 1829, Andrew Jackson becomes the seventh president. 1830, Congress passes the Indian Removal Act, forcing all Indians east. 1832, Chief Justice John Marshall rules in favor of the Native Americans and the tribes in this case, and then Jackson ignores it. And in 1838, a large group of Cherokee begin the journey that has become known as the Trail of Tears, and more than 4,000 Cherokee died. And this is just one of the tragedies of American history. This is a terrible thing that should never have happened, but it did, because of decisions that were made at the highest levels of government. Really a tragic thing. Thanks, everyone. Bye.